Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the House of Nostalgia. If this is your first time here, welcome. This video is about the life and career of Big Mama Thornton and what she had to go through to become an outstanding blues performer. She was a success. Now, she didn't have a lot of hit records. That's what the industry says. They always say that because back in the day, if a song didn't cross over, you didn't have a hit. I listened to one of her albums off and on to this day, which I discovered just a few years ago. Her voice, talent, persistence, and style of dress were very innovative for her time. She was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame, Alabama Blues Hall of Fame, and a Grammy Hall of Fame award for Hound Dog. What I don't like about the music industry is that a lot of these performers from back in the day receive all of these accolades years after their death. It takes the people of today to realize the genius of these performers. I'm glad she was alive to receive at least a couple of these awards. I'm pretty sure it meant something to her. Singing was her life. It was no plan B for Thornton. Before we get into her story, if you would be so kind as to subscribe to the channel and push the like button, it will be greatly appreciated. Big Mama Thornton was born Willie Mae Thornton on December the 11th, 1926 in Birmingham, Alabama. So she says. But her birth certificate says she was born in Arrington, Alabama. Her father, George Thornton, was a minister, and her mother, Mattie Thornton, sang in church. But surprisingly, this is not where she got her start. In an interview she did with Chris Stratwitz, Thornton said that she did not sing in church, but she didn't say she wasn't listening and taking notes. Thornton grew up with 5 siblings. She had a younger brother who died right after his birth. She also stated that her music comes from her life experiences, and these emotions that she put into her music started early for Thornton. She was teased by her classmates because of her height and size, and her family had to deal with the heartbreak of losing their mother, who passed away when Thornton was just 13 years old. She took care of her mother before she died. Now, when you listen to the early part of the interview, she didn't want to tell her age, so a lot of the early timeline was a little murky. Thornton left school and found a job cleaning in a tavern after moving to Barber County, Alabama to live with relatives. Working in this tavern is when Thornton got her big break. The tavern's main singer was drunk and wasn't able to perform, so Thornton convinced the owner to let her perform. This is called staying ready because you never know when your time will come up. Thornton was cleaning that tavern, but she was waiting for her moment. Singing wasn't new to her. As I stated earlier, she was taking notes in church. She was listening to blues artists like Memphis Minnie and Betsy Smith. Thornton considered herself to be self-taught in everything she did, from teaching herself how to play the harmonica at the age of 8 to teaching herself how to play the drums, as well as singing the blues the way she wanted to sing them. At the age of 14, Thornton entered a singing contest and won first place, which gave her the chance to join Sammy Green's Hot Harlem Review. This was like what they call the Chitlin Circuit. Thornton spoke on traveling across the southern states, performing with this review. She decided to leave the review after being with them for a few years. She was no longer a teenager. Thornton was going through it around this time in her life. Sammy Green Hot Harlem Review owed her money, and they refused to pay, so she left the review in her early 20s and ended up in Houston, Texas. This was in 1948, and the Houston blues scene was on the rise, just like the Chicago blues scene. Plus, the sound of blues was changing from the sound of the 20s and 30s. There was this new crop of blues artists on the scene, and race music was being called rhythm and blues. 2 years after moving to Houston, Thornton recorded her first songs, Bad Luck Got My Man and All Right Baby. She was hired by vocalist and tenor sax player Joe Papoose Fritz to sing in his band for $50 a night in Houston, Texas, at the very popular El Dorado Ballroom. This was like her big start, and she was getting noticed by other big-name performers. Thornton played with Fritz for a while and ended up signing a 5-year contract with the owner of Peacock Records, Don Roby, and performing in his Bronze Peacock Club. In 1951, Thornton recorded I'm All Fed Up, Partnership Blues for Peacock Records, accompanied by Joe Scott Orchestra. The song was ignored by Billboard, and it didn't make the charts. Thornton released Mischievous Boogie in 1952, and this song wasn't completely ignored by Billboard. They did mention it, but it failed to chart. At the end of 1951, she recorded 2 new songs, No Jody for Me and Let the Tears Fall Baby. Even with the help from Billboard, the songs did not get the recognition that was anticipated, so Thornton had to go back to work shining shoes, which was a side hustle that she did to support herself because the songs was not making any money. After these failed recordings, Don Roby decided to put Thornton on the road. Obviously, they felt that Thornton had potential. She was sent to California with Johnny Otis, who was a composer, talent scout, and musician. He took part in the success of a lot of big names in the 50s, so he had plans for Thornton, and working with Otis was the turning point in her career. This was the same year that she started going by the name Big Mama Thornton, which was given to her by Frank Schiffman, the Apollo manager, after her successful Apollo Theater performance. All of this was in 1952, the same year she was given a song to record that would change her life and make her a household name. Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller wrote and produced Hound Dog. The song was presented to Thornton with instructions on how to sing it. Now, by this time, Thornton had been performing for over 10 years, traveling with men, heavy drinking, and dressing in men's attire. She had a pretty tough exterior, so she decided to sing the song like she was asked to do, which was good for her. The song was a success and sold over 500,000 copies, but Thornton only received $500. 3 years later, the song was recorded by Elvis, and it sold over 10 million copies and made Elvis quite wealthy. When Thornton's time was up with Peacock Records and Johnny Otis, she signed and recorded with quite a few labels without a hit record. But to me personally, Thornton was a live performer. She was an artist that I would have loved to see perform on stage, and they finally got it right when she recorded Big Mama Thornton and the Chicago Blues Band with Muddy Waters and his band. These recordings were taken from her tour in Europe with the American Folk Blues Festival tour with Eddie Boyd, who was on there with her, as well as Walter Shaky Horton and Buddy Guy. Due to the blues becoming an unpopular genre in the United States around the early 60s, a lot of blues performers started touring Europe where their music was a lot more appreciated. Thornton performed plenty of times at the Monterey Jazz Festival and traveled to Northern Europe with the American Folk Blues Festival, where her music took her to places most people could only dream of. She was able to perform for huge crowds of people and see these places with other blues performers, places like Amsterdam, Finland, Sweden, and that was a long way from Ayrton, Alabama. Thornton wrote and recorded Ball and Chain for Baytone Records. They decided not to release the recording and keep the copyright for themselves. She had to fight for the right to her song. The song was later recorded by Big Brother and the Holding Company, featuring Janis Joplin, and it became a huge hit for them. Thornton admitted to giving Joplin permission to record the song and was finally able to receive royalties for her hard work and many years in the blues industry, and this was in 1967. One of my favorite albums of Thornton was her Stronger Than Dirt album. My two favorite songs on this album was her version of the song she wrote, Ball and Chain, and Summertime. This album was recorded in 1969 on Mercury Records. Another thing that I noticed was that a lot of blues artists seem to like taking their album cover photos on desolated porches or in front of desolated houses. I randomly play these two songs often. The first time I heard this album was about 4 years ago. Thornton performed up until close to her death. When she became weak, she would perform sitting down, which is what she did when she performed with Aretha Franklin. Big Mama Thornton passed away on July the 25th, 1984 in a Los Angeles boarding house. Now, I find it to be very sad the way she passed away. I'm pretty sure she made money, but without a movie on her life, I guess we would never really know what happened with that. Where are her husband and children? Now, it's a few publications that said she was married to Darrell Jackson, and she was the mother of at least one child, a son to be exact. I do not believe she was ever married. Producing a marriage license shouldn't have been that hard for him. Until I see that, I don't believe it. I do know that Thornton liked women, but that doesn't mean she didn't have a child when she was a teen and lost custody. It was said if it was true that she tried to raise the child while she was on the road. Now, I feel that it should be a movie about her life and not just a character in somebody else's story, her own story. We had Ma Rainey and Betsy Smith on Netflix. Hollywood, it's time. Take notice of this incredible blues singer, okay? Her story would be about a blues legend's disappointments, innovations, and triumphs, all in the name of a woman who loved the blues. Thank you all so much for watching this video.